All right. Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to be coming to you live. It's so wonderful to connect with you all in real time and get to have these conversations with you. I'm here with the amazing Ashok Gupta. And for many of you, he likely needs no introduction. But if you're not familiar with him, Ashok fully recovered from ME/CFS back in the 1990s, long before anyone was recovering, long before neuroplasticity was widely known or talked about. And back then, no one was even really talking about recovery. But Ashok promised himself, made a pact that if he ever got better, he'd do everything he could to help others out there to do the same. And he went on to create the Gupta program, one of the longest running and most respected ME/CFS recovery programs out there. It's been around for over 25 years and is one of the only ones with published research studies behind it. Ashok, thank you so much for joining me live today. I am excited to do this.
Me too. Thank you for the invitation and the lovely introduction as well.
All right. Oh, did you just freeze? No, okay. People watching, listening, bear with us. I'm kind of new to this whole doing it live thing, so I'm learning as we go. And one of the learnings is I think I need to have my glasses on so I can figure out how we go from here. Okay, so we've got some people saying hi in the comments. Yes, it'd be great to know where you're joining in from. We've got someone from Liverpool, someone from Finland, someone from Germany. Hello, hello, hello. All right. So it'd be great for people that are tuning in live if you could start dropping your comments, your questions, because that's the goal of all of this, so that we could just in real time talk to you and answer and talk about the topics that you really want to know about. So some people from the US, from the UK. I know one question that has already come in, actually came in ahead of the call, is so there's a lot of talk about the freeze state lately, and someone is asking, how do you deal with the freeze state? I don't feel like fight or flight. I just feel really numb most of the time. And I've wondered if that's actually freeze. So that's a great one. What is the freeze state? How do you know if you're in it? And then what are you supposed to do once you've identified that this is what is happening?
So the freeze state is part of, we often talk about the fight or flight response, right? So when we have something scary that happens to us, so that could be even a past trauma, it could be a stress, could be an anxiety, something that's provoking anxiety in us. There's a fight or flight response. So the fight response is when you feel angry and you really want to do something about it. And that's a protective response. And we get angry when we're going to fight a danger. Flight is when we want to run away. And that's the fear response. Freeze is often when we see, we talk about a rabbit in headlights, where a rabbit suddenly freezes because the anxiety or the threat is so huge, it doesn't know what to do in that moment. It's become overwhelming. And sometimes when we're too much in fight or flight, it can culminate in a freeze state where we just don't know what to do. We don't know whether to fight, whether to flight, how to process the situation. And we get into that freeze state where the nervous system is continually activated, continually kind of hyperactivated. And that freeze response can either be at a hyperactivation level or even, funny enough, a hypoactivation level, where we actually just have no energy and we're just frozen. And I don't know if we've ever experienced that, where you feel really down, really depressed all of a sudden, and you just don't want to do anything. So it can be either a hyperreaction or a hyporeaction, where we just got no energy. And the person who's asking that question, they've said, I just feel really numb most of the time. That's probably what we do when we're in that freeze response, where it's either, extreme levels of anxiety where we just don't know what to do, or we've just essentially collapsed. We just don't have any energy or any wherewithal to do anything. And we then dissociate from that experience, because who wants to feel in that fight or flight response? You want to get out of that fight or flight response. And so therefore we dissociate, we numb from that freeze state. And that's what this person who's asking the question, what they may be asking. And to come out of that freeze state, how do we deal with that freeze state? Once again, it's a step-by-step process of, as we do in the Gupta program, first of all, calming the nervous system overall. Yep. So how do we ratchet down the overall nervous system so that we're no longer feeling like we're in the freeze, fight, or flight response continually? And then dealing with specific reasons why we're in the freeze response. Is the freeze response to do with our own symptoms and our own illness? Are we just feeling continually anxious about our illness? Or indeed, is our freeze state, fight or flight, caused by something external? And then looking at that, investigating that. And as you know, we have lots of different tools to help support people to come out of that fight, flight, or freeze response.
What I think is really interesting about this too is that our brain and our nervous system put us into these various states to protect us, and they do that with the tools that they have, which is giving us symptoms. And it took me a long time to realize that those symptoms could be both physical symptoms or emotional symptoms. So it might give you severe depression or anxiety or something to immobilize you just to get your attention. So yeah, I just think it's really interesting to know that, because sometimes I used to think of things like anxiety and stress and depression as just unfortunate byproducts of being alive, but it's all messages. It's all coming from our brain and nervous system, and just depending on what's going on. So,
exactly. And Raelan, you've identified it's such an important reframe here of reframing everything that's happening to us, whether it be emotional, whether it be physical. In these types of conditions, it's essentially saying, I can find it annoying and wish it would go away, but actually it's my own protection systems, my own defense systems working for me because they love me. And if I look at it that way, then I can realize this isn't about trying to figure out the next supplement that's going to heal me or the next this or the next that. I simply need to reprogram my brain that I don't need such a protective response anymore. And therefore we can calm down the nervous system, calm down the immune system, calm down some of the emotional systems that are just trying to protect us. And that's really what we're here to do.
And I think whether you're in fight, flight, or freeze, my understanding from my research and talking to experts like yourself is that really determining which state you're in isn't really what's going to be your path to getting past it. It's about turning off those alarm bells. It's about getting all the sensors in your body to read that there is no threat, so it doesn't need to be in one of these states. So the approach to it is that, those reassuring messages of safety, of doing what you can to remind yourself that you're okay, that everything is fine, that you are safe, and getting at the core of those things that are making you feel unsafe versus trying to figure out okay, I'm in flight, so I need to use this tool. The alarm's going off. Essentially, it's about turning off the alarm, whatever alarm it's choosing for you.
Exactly. And it's a holistic package of things, as you say. So in medicine, we're very used to saying, there's this one problem over here, here's this one little solution over here, and that will fix it. But in these types of defensive or hyperprotective conditions, it's a holistic approach. So it's not just one thing will fix that one issue. It's building up a resilience in your nervous system so it's not overreacting. And that is, it does take a little time and it takes a little patience to get to that stage. And I think that in society now, on Instagram, Facebook, you can see so many people talking about nervous system regulation now, so many people talking about, vagus nerve. All of this wasn't there a few years ago, but now people are realizing this is the fundamental part of healing.
Absolutely. So many great questions coming in. Some people commenting about subtitles. So this is a newer feature in YouTube that they will do the AI voiceovers and dubbing, but I imagine in the live calls, this is going to happen after the fact. So if you're not seeing it now, please just check back later for the live replay, and you should have that available. All right, we have a question from Julie. She said, I have had ME, concussion syndrome, and long COVID, feeling much better thanks to brain retraining, inner child work. But why did these three conditions produce such differing symptoms, all for the same thing?
Well, I think that what we have to remember is when we have a threat, so that threat can be COVID, it can be flu, it can be hitting your head. All of these three things are essentially initially starting a different set of symptoms, right? So a concussion will give it a slightly different set of symptoms to what COVID may give. But ultimately, it may be the same function in the brain, that is causing that myriad of symptoms. So the brain is very clever. It will say, what is the threat and what is the appropriate emotional, biological, endocrine response that I need? And that will be unique to every threat. But then the solution is the same. When we retrain the brain, say we're no longer at a threat, it will then stop those cluster of symptoms that are occurring. And once again, we're trained, I suppose, in the way that we're brought up to think, I've got a symptom because something's attacking my body. But here we're saying, I've got a symptom because my own body is hyperprotecting me. And that's what I need to retrain.
And I remember Dr. John Sarno, obviously one of the pioneers in the field of mind-body medicine, talked about the symptom imperative, essentially meaning that when nervous system regulation is at the core of what's going on, the way the symptoms present themselves don't actually matter, and we don't fully understand it. No one on the planet fully understands the brain, but it seems to be that the brain chooses symptoms that we're going to believe. So if you had a history of migraines and it's wanting to slow you down or give you some symptoms, it'll give you migraines. For me, I had a mother and a grandmother who had chronic fatigue syndrome. So that makes sense. And, once you're onto it, it's like, okay, I can't give them that symptom. They've figured that out. Like once my CFS was gone, a couple of years later, I started getting chronic back pain. It's like, okay, I got to try something else. So I just find it so baffling that you can have all of these symptoms, and like everything that you talk about and all of the experts in this field it's really less about tying that symptom to the condition when you're looking at these sort of mind-body conditions, because the correlation between the two isn't necessarily really there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I know about Sarno's work, and I admire some of the content there. I don't fully align with it, but I think there's some great things that Dr. Sarno says and some great insights. And the way that we look at this is actually there are three main reasons that a condition may come along to communicate with us. So one is a protection mechanism. So the classic example, if any of us have children, we know that when they don't want to go to school, they get a stomachache, right? Because that's and it will be a real stomachache because the protection mechanism is saying there is a threat and therefore we need to protect ourselves. But then secondly, it can be a message. So we have many patients who were working 10, 12, 14 hours a day in a job that they hated, slogging their guts out, really working so hard that they're putting their health under threat. And the message that the unconscious is saying is not just a protection mechanism, but actually you need to reconfigure your life. You need to look at how you're responding to these situations. You're overachieving, you're worrying about what people will think of you, and therefore you're pushing your body too hard that could actually threaten your existence. Your very mortality is at stake here. So that's the kind of message that comes from the unconscious. And a third one, which Sarno talks a lot about, are these unresolved emotions. So sometimes if we haven't dealt with, let's say, a bereavement, or we've got unresolved, repressed anger to a particular person, if we don't address that, that can potentially manifest itself as pain or sometimes some kind of symptom. But all of these things, in my view, are risk factors to the overall defensiveness of the brain. And therefore, what we want to do is look at all of these components, regulate the entire nervous system, investigate what these messages or these repressed emotions might be. We want to look at the parts, which parts are active here. So there's a whole constellation of different aspects that when they work together can really magnify the healing response.
We got a question from Liza. This is one that comes up a lot because everyone understandably or most people are quite scared to start expanding their activity. They don't know how. They become afraid of everything in life because everything in life has started to make them feel worse. So she's asking, is there a good frame of mind we should have while doing the activity we're trying, such as like, you've got this, or there's nothing wrong with your body. So when you're working with the many people that you work with, how do you set them up to be successful to start slowly and safely expanding their activity? What does that look like?
Yes. So pacing ourselves back into normal life is a great skill that we won't get perfect the first time. We're going to keep learning. We're going to keep getting feedback. So the first port of call is, in anticipation of an activity, because the amygdala and the insular parts of the brain have been protecting you, when you are going to do a new activity you haven't done in a while or increase your activity, your brain will panic, and your brain will or may panic and say, oh no, we can't do this. This will be too much. I'm going to get some more symptoms. It's going to make me feel worse. And when that happens, we then want to use the brain retraining to calm that response down, to train our brain that actually it's okay. But the flip side is that doesn't mean we then go and run a marathon or we go and spend 3 hours at the gym. We still consciously pace ourselves. So the way we talk about this is conscious pacing, not unconscious pacing. So unconscious pacing is when these automatic worries come up and they're trying to prevent you from doing activity. So those we retrain. But then conscious pacing is saying, okay, now that I've stopped the patterns, what's an appropriate level of activity that I can do that will increase, my resilience, but not push me over the edge? And here we call about what they call the energy envelope, or the energy boundary, that you operate at your boundary as much as you can do without making yourself feel much worse. Like you may do more activity and feel slightly more tired, but it's manageable and you don't have negative effects. So that you can give your brain the feedback, hey, we were able to do 5 minutes more walking today and we're okay today. Tomorrow we can do another 5 minutes and that'll be okay. So it's gently pacing yourself and persuading the brain that you aren't in danger. And to give you an example of this, so some you may be aware of some of the recent research on peanut allergies. And what they're finding, a groundbreaking study is just about to be published, which shows that people who have peanut allergies, like severe allergies where their brain goes into this panic mode, they give them what they call microdosing. So microdosing amounts of peanuts, and they give them a certain amount for the first week, then a slight more for the second week, a bit more for the third week, a bit more for the fourth week. And eventually someone is able to get to the stage of eating peanuts and being completely fine, which is groundbreaking because we think peanut allergies can't be changed. And we believe it's the same process in the brain. It's the insular and the amygdala parts of the brain who've made a decision that the peanut is dangerous and then create this hyper reaction. And so in a similar way, we're training and persuading the brain that we can do more without ill effects and essentially convincing the brain. And that has to be gently, step by step. So we break the negative patterns through retraining, and we also gently pace.
That is fascinating. So it's essentially just phobia training for some people, at least, even with peanut allergies. That is really interesting. And I'm just thinking about our last question too, just to share my personal experience in case that's helpful about the mindset of like, what do you tell yourself when you're expanding activity? And I came to a point where I was pretty much thinking of it like a gym workout, because I do a little bit of activity and I knew it was going to make me feel worse the next day. And just kind of like when you go to the gym and you lift some weights and the next day you're going to be in a bit of a pain. I didn't understand it at the time, but I knew that feeling some symptoms was going to be an inevitable part of getting better. So I do the activity, keep it small, exactly like you're saying. So you're not, trying to run a marathon. You just do little things. The symptoms come. You're like, okay, I don't love this. It's not fun, but I knew it was coming. It doesn't freak me out. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't mean I'm getting worse. And I know they're going to go away. And then the next time I'll be able to do a little bit more. And then that will bring on symptoms. And I'll know it was okay. And then that first amount of thing that I did no longer brings on symptoms. It's building up strength essentially, or like the peanut allergy, it's slowly expanding out and showing your system that it's okay. So I just think whatever works for you, like whatever you can tell yourself in the moment, just to accept and not panic over the symptoms, and just remind yourself that your body isn't broken, you're okay. And you're just going to feel some unpleasantness on your way out of this. There's no way around it.
Yes, and the analogy we use is riding a bike. Like there is a balance. When you're riding a bike, you don't want to go too much to the left, which is engaging in the fear and thinking I can't do anything and my body's going to react. You want to break out of that so you come back to balance. And at the same time, you don't want to go the other way, which is my body's completely fine. I can do anything. Right?
Exactly.
Saying, I'm going to gently increase my levels of activity, and I can do this. And if there's any, symptomatology, that's okay. I'll manage it, and I'm going to do it step by step. I'm not going to push myself. And it's those achiever traits, those approval seeker traits, those helper traits that we know about where we might push beyond our limits. Yeah. And we have to watch out for our personality traits. So many of our patients say to us, I got better. I started feeling 60% better, 70%, 80%. And then I had this urge inside that I've got to now get back on the laptop and work, full hours because I felt guilty that I wasn't working because now I feel better. And then, of course, the symptoms come back because it's an all or nothing. And a lot of people who have these certain trauma backgrounds, etc., it's very black and white thinking. It's all or nothing. Well, now I'm feeling 60% better. I must be going back to work. Yeah? And it's not. It's a gentle pacing, conscious pacing.
Yeah, and not even so much, I mean, aside from the physical deconditioning that happens when you're inactive for long periods of time, obviously you're not going to get up and run a marathon. A healthy, like symptom-free person couldn't just get up and run a marathon. So you might even be physically capable of going back to work and doing all these things. But when you're working with your body's threat assessment systems, it's like gradual re-exposure therapy for, fears. Like you can't just jump all in. It's going to set off too many alarms. It's going to freak out. So it's like a child, you're just easing them in. Okay, let's try one more step. Okay, now here's a couple more steps. It's safe. You're okay. I see a question because you're talking about the peanuts. So I think this is a really great tie-in to Florist says, I've been reacting to a lot of food since COVID. Every reaction, even water, causes numbness in the face after 3 seconds. Can brain retraining or Gupta help? And I had a similar experience where it got to the point where it felt like every bite of food I put in my mouth made me feel worse. And I didn't understand how I was suddenly allergic to food in general. So yeah, if you could talk to us, what's happening there?
Yeah, so it's a similar story where the brain, when it feels that the body is under threat from the COVID, from whatever threat we had, it starts now superimposing that threat onto anything in our lives, anything new especially. So people might take a new supplement, a new medication, or indeed a food, and the brain, because it's in this outright panic mode, thinks, oh no, that could be dangerous, and that could be dangerous, and that could be dangerous. So to err on the side of caution, the amygdala and insular parts of our brain start seeing those things as threats, creating this reaction. Now, of course, the first thing I will say is obviously get any new symptom checked out by your doctor. But once you've had things checked out, just see it as yet another symptom of a hyper defensive system. And through brain retraining, however you're doing that, whatever program you're using, over time, just having that faith and trust that it will improve. Because it is scary when we get a new symptom and we think, why is that happening to me? And you'll go to a nutritionist and they'll say, okay, well, you need to cut out that food. Oh, you're reacting to that food? Now cut out that food. And the more you do that, we have patients who are now on 2 or 3 foods when they first come to us because they've tried that exclusion diet. It hasn't helped them. All it does, exclusion diets often, by 100% excluding something, you're training the brain even deeper that those foods are dangerous and therefore we must avoid them. And what we're able to do is gently, through retraining, introduce those foods back, just small amounts of it, till eventually the brain gets accustomed to it, feels used to it, just like the peanut analogy. So the symptom you're describing there, we see a lot of people who have very unusual reactions to food, but it will improve, it will get better.
You explained something so well that I haven't heard anyone talk about in this way, because so many of us go down the food rabbit hole trying to get well. I remember when I first got sick, we heard a lot, that quote, let food be thy medicine. And I took that in 100%. I thought, this makes sense. What I put into my body, it's the building blocks of my body. So this is what's going to get me well. And then everyone has an opinion about what you shouldn't be eating. And I read all the books. And before long, you're like, my diet needs to be, no gluten, no sugar, no caffeine, no nightshades. It has to be paleo. It has to be keto. It has to be organic, but only when grown locally and in season. And before you know it, the whole world has told you that there's no safe foods. So that makes so much sense how we get so much fear around food and our body's like, okay, bad. And just, it reacts. It's trying to help you out.
Exactly. So a lot of the information that we get around food actually exacerbates the situation and makes things a lot worse. Now, of course, there are certain foods that even we encourage people to avoid and to increase, but in a relaxed way. So we call it the 80% anti-inflammatory diet, which gives you that 20% of leeway that, okay, if I had that food, no big deal, it doesn't matter. But you try to stick to any diet 100%, it's going to create more anxiety and make the situation worse.
Yeah, even if it is the perfect diet for you, just that perfectionist approach to it is going to be causing a lot of stress and fear. Okay, so this is a really interesting question from Felicity. Do you think limiting beliefs can influence what symptoms you experience? So, for example, if you feel powerless around being heard authentically, maybe you have some throat symptoms. So, yeah, have you seen anything like that?
Yes. And, it's not even something like that 10 years ago would have been seen as really woo-woo, but actually
Yeah.
even modern science is understanding that we have different symptoms that are associated with certain emotions that we experience. So as an example, these are often associated with the energy centers of the body. So if we have challenges with communication or guilt or sadness, we will notice that actually we'll have more throat symptoms. We'll have difficulty in expressing ourselves. If we have issues around anger, around resistance to people, those people will experience more headaches, more migraines, and more kind of tightness around the head. So that's more associated with the fight response. If we're someone who has more of fear in our lives, we fear situations, people, foods, we'll notice that we have more gut symptoms. So fear is associated more with the chest and the stomach area, butterflies in your stomach. So then we'll have more gut issues if we're more, experience more fear emotions. So absolutely, the emotions that we experience can directly impact on these energy centers and the symptoms that we may experience.
Wow, that is fascinating. Thank you for explaining that. Another one from Veronica, something that I suspect you hear a lot. I know I hear a lot. I was getting better and the somatic practice seemed to work. So my daughter had her friend over for the night and I totally crashed with nerve pain. For 5 days now, I can hardly walk on the stairs. Like, why? I don't get it. Like, I was doing so well. I was doing all the right things and now I'm laid out again. What is happening?
So we all have a smoke alarm in our kitchen, right? That goes off when the toast gets burnt. And so in a similar way, what happens is as we improve, as that smoke alarm, which is a proxy for these brain structures, it starts thinking, oh, a certain amount of smoke is okay. That's fine. A certain amount of smoke is okay. I'm not going to fire off the alarm. Oh, a bit more smoke. That's okay. We're not in danger. But then a bit more smoke comes up and that's then hit that threshold where your smoke alarm then says, this is too much. This is going to be life-threatening. I need to trigger the smoke alarm. So then the smoke alarm goes beep, 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 beep. And then you get your tea towel out and you start madly waving it, at the smoke alarm. And then what happens is when that smoke alarm goes off, we then panic because we think, I was doing so well. I was improving. And now I'm back to square one and all these symptoms have come back. In that moment, the most important thing is whatever symptoms you get, however awful you feel, it's going back into the retraining and making sure you don't go into the panic mode. The way we describe it is, there's just some more learning to do around brain retraining. There's just a bit more resilience to build into my nervous system. So this isn't a bad thing. It's something more to learn. Yeah. And, let's say anything that we learn, if we take a test at school or university and we don't get the grades that we want, we don't go into full-blown panic mode. We think, okay, just a bit more studying, a little more to do in this. And when we reframe it like that, we recognize that it's okay. These ups and downs are part of recovery. We all want a straight line, but it's never a straight line. It will be a process of ups and downs that we navigate. And that resilience, that emotional resilience is, okay, I've had a dip. We don't even call them relapses. We've had a little dip. That's okay. It's part of my healing journey. I'll get through this. And when we look at it in that way, then we'll get there.
I love this. People watching my channel, you're going to hear me repeat this a lot because it's such you need a manageable amount of smoke. It's such a perfect way to picture it. Smoke alarms exist and you can have some smoke and it's okay. But when it detects it's too much, that's when the alarms go off. And I think also the thing that happens once that smoke alarm goes off is that we panic even more. And in our bodies, that panic is like the smoke. It's just sending that message that like, something's wrong, something's wrong. So I know it's a really challenging thing, but when you do go into those severe symptom flares after you've set the smoke alarm off, is to find ways to not further panic and not think that you're going backwards or that you're never going to get better. And then just to understand that this is part of the process and that you just got to wait it out. It sucks, but it's okay. You're going to be okay. And, don't try and pull out 8,000 tools to fix it and go into panic mode. It's all right. Just take care of yourself, do what you got to do to get through it, and try to, it's a big ask, but be at peace with the process and not worry too much about the symptoms that you're having.
Raelan, I love that phrase that you've said there. And we say a similar thing, which is trust in the process, right? You've got to trust in something, right? Otherwise, your life becomes very difficult. It's trust in the process that yes, there will be dips. You will experience it. In fact, we're very honest. We say you will not have a linear line of progression of your health. It will be ups and downs. You'll have some good days, you'll have some bad days, but eventually the number of good days will keep increasing as you keep up that resilience. And eventually you'll get to the stage where that smoke alarm has that resilience. It won't fire off anymore. It'll only fire off when there's real emergency. Otherwise it will be stable and you will get there.
I have a question from someone. I can't pop it up on the screen, but it's because we're streaming live in my Facebook group as well. But it's from Anurup. They ask, can you please, this great thing about having you here live, Ashok, is that we get to get an inside look at your program, understand what it's about for people that are considering it. Like, what does this look like? So they're asking, can you please share details about how much time is needed in your program to do the brain training rounds? Is it, for example, 10 minutes several times a day, or 1 hour a few times a day? My listening and processing capacity can range from 0 to 40 minutes in one day. So I want to be sure I can participate and apply the recommended daily, practices.
Mm-hmm. This is even part of pacing that we've talked about. We have people who are bedbound, who literally are overstimulated by any light, any sound. And what they do is they start with our program and start with just 5 minutes a day. If that's all you can manage, start with something, some gentle breath work, some gentle meditative techniques we have just for 5 minutes. And then you build it up to 10 minutes. And then you build it up to 20 minutes. And that's how we get people who are bedbound through to fully functioning. And therefore, in our program, on average, we say, can we manage 20 minutes as a minimum? And if we can't, you can still start the program and do what you can manage. So what we encourage people to do is, first of all, have the first R of the program, as you know, Raelan. First R of the program is relaxing the nervous system, or regulating your nervous system. Mm-hmm. So some gentle breath work, some gentle meditation. If you can manage only 5 minutes, fine. If you can do 10 minutes or 20 minutes, that's great. That's all good. And then after that, the minimum we ask is the brain retraining exercises. Short, you can even do short versions. We have like 10-second versions, 20-second versions that you do throughout the day. And we obviously explain to patients when they use these types of tools. And therefore, it's perfectly manageable. Whatever your level of cognitive function, your brain fog, you can start very gently and build up as you improve. And, of course, these are all quite relaxing exercises as well. So some people, if they couldn't normally manage, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes of listening to an audiobook or watching television, the exercises that we're talking about actually calm your nervous system. So you can often do these exercises for longer than you might be able to do something that's stimulating.
Okay. And we do have a few more questions about the program, and know that we will get to those. Absolutely. I just want to make sure some of these other questions are answered as well. Matt has one that I hear all of the time. Any advice for someone stalled at the 70% recovery mark? My body practices have been an important part of my recovery, but I'm no longer seeing the gains that I once did. So many people, myself included, for quite a while, got stuck at that around 70% mark. So, what's happening there?
This is unique to each person. And sometimes what it is like the peanut analogy, we're getting to a certain level where the brain says, I can manage and handle a certain amount of activity, but anything more is too much for me. So sometimes when people get stuck at 70 or 80%, that's still a recovery from the condition. The next phase is rehabilitating your brain back into normal life. Because the brain is saying, hey, we're safe if we are not doing anything. But the moment we try to increase activity, that's dangerous. That's too much. And therefore, it is that process of gently introducing activity, pulling back if you feel worse on a particular day. So that's the pacing aspect. Doing more if a certain day you feel better. And then related to that, we find the biggest issue with people getting stuck at 70, 80% is actually the parts. Yeah. So many of us have heard of parts therapy, parts coaching. We have certain parts of our personality that may be pushing us a little too hard. And it may not be what you do, it's the way that you do it. So if you take two people and they both are given, let's say, a project to do by 5 o'clock or something to write by 5 o'clock. One person may say, okay, fine, I'll just get this done and be in a relaxed frame of mind. But the other person may think, oh my gosh, I've got to get that done by 5 o'clock. It's too much. How am I going to do it? And the whole nervous system gets galvanized and stressed in order to achieve exactly the same thing that the first person is doing. Now, what you'll find is the people who get stuck at that 70, 80%, they tend to be people whose nervous system tends to get hyper aroused at general day-to-day activities and tasks. Yeah? And they're burning more energy and their nervous system is more defensive because of certain personality traits. And I wonder, and this is a very subtle thing, and I wonder if people can recognize this in themselves, that you may have something very simple to do, but it's like you do it with fists clenched. Oh my gosh, I've got to get this done. Come on, I've got to do it perfectly. Have I done it well? What will people think of the thing that I'm going to do? Or I'm going to a party. What will people think of me? What will I say? Oh, and then afterwards, regret. Oh, I shouldn't have said that to that person. It's because our nervous system is stimulated. And so that final 20 to 30% is training our nervous system to be calm and relaxed in day-to-day activities. Because if not, what it's learning to do is overstimulate and then use up energy. I give you the example of incense sticks. So we all know about incense sticks or candles. You'll have different candles or different incense sticks burning at different rates, depending on the brand of the incense stick or the candle. So in a similar way, we all burn energy at different levels, depending on how stressed we get with the normal day-to-day activities. And that's now something we become aware of and go to an even deeper level of relaxation.
That, yes, makes a lot of sense. And I think about myself and lots of the people that I talk to, exactly what you're saying is, because you picture we get to 70%, 80%, and we think, I'm socializing, I'm going to the gym even, I'm traveling, I'm doing all these things I enjoy. Physically, I seem fine. I should be able to do anything that I want. So at this point, we start taking back on going back to work. And we think, well, if I can do these other things, I can do my job. But going back to work is, for many of us, a fist clenched activity. It's not enjoyable. And it's not just going back to work. It's dealing with stressful colleagues. It's managing 100 emails a day. It's, all the different aspects that come along with it. So I just like, it's the type of activities we start to take back on at that time that our brain is still fearing. And usually it's the really big lifts that we save for last. So it's understandable if our body is pushing back when we're in those situations.
And it's the expectations and standards that we put on ourselves. We tend to be very hard on ourselves. And we know with chronic fatigue, even with long COVID, there's certain traits. And once again, we're not saying it's psychological or in the mind, but there are certain personality traits that are risk factors. And one of them is conscientiousness, really wanting to do a good job, really well done, perfectly. And that can keep our nervous system stressed and anxious when we're doing day-to-day tasks. And I think that's where the parts work that we do, a lot of our work is not only getting people better through brain retraining, but keeping them better, keeping them well. How do you stay well for the rest of your life once you've retrained your brain? That's the second half of our program, the more advanced program. And that is really about recognizing what we're doing and how we're doing it and changing those patterns.
That makes a lot of sense. Just wanted to put the shout out from Allie here saying she was late, but just wanted to say she's almost 100% recovered with the Gupta program. So Allie, that is wonderful. We're so, so happy for you. Okay, so many good questions. A lot of them around things like, how do you integrate your program when you have other physical things going on? Like, they have structural issues in the body. So we have this question here: how do you integrate your program with individuals that have upper cervical instability causing structural issues that are negatively impacting the nervous system?
Yes, of course. If there are further physical abnormalities, we look to have those treated separately. And these things are all part of a complex web of interaction between your body's physical structure, its endocrine system, the immune system, the gut. All of these things are constantly communicating to each other, deciding what is best for you, for your survival. And as an example, we have many people who have long COVID, chronic fatigue, And the risk factor is hypermobility syndrome. Yeah? So many people may have heard of hypermobility, where your joints are hyperflexible, as an example, or indeed Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And so there are links between our physical structure of the body and how that impacts on the brain as a risk factor. So our hypothesis is that actually, because the brain is, when we have hypermobility as an example, the brain's more likely to inflame the body as a protective response because of the connective tissue and the inflammation in the connective tissue. And that inflammation then generalizes, and the brain then gets stuck in these defense responses. So what we can do is continue with our brain retraining and just trust that we hope that it will have a positive impact on any negative structural issues that we have in the body. Because those two can be linked. They're not always linked, but they can be linked.
Thank you for that. Popping up another question here. It's one that comes up a lot from Sung Ho Kim. Thank you for this. I've recently progressed to moderate to severe ME/CFS, and my GP recommends either taking full time off or possibly going part-time. From your experience, is full rest usually more effective for recovery? And I think this is a nuanced question. There's a couple different things that come up here, but the main one that I hear a lot is, like, do I need to quit my job? Will I never get better if I don't just 100% go in and focus on my recovery?
So once again, I'm very cautious about giving blanket suggestions, because people say, oh, well, Ashok said that. This is unique to your situation, but here is a way that you can determine this. This is your barometer. When you are at work, whether it's full-time or part-time, you will know if you are stressing out your nervous system. You will know that because you'll compare it to, let's say, a week when you're not at work, and how do you feel then? If you can clearly show that when I'm at work, I'm more stressed, my nervous system's over-triggered, I'm feeling much worse, yeah, then of course, to fully get well, it will require you to take some time off work, maybe go part-time, maybe take some full-time off, so that you're able to focus on the brain retraining, focus on regulating your nervous system, strengthening your nervous system. Right? Because when you are engaging in these practices, you are looking to increase resilience, so your nervous system is not so trigger happy. But then if you're doing that and building it up, but then at the same time going to work and feeling flustered and triggered, it's doing the opposite. And so, of course, it's useful to take time out, really focus on your recovery where you can. That doesn't mean to say that that's the only pathway. There are many people who continue with part-time work. That's enough of a rest to then do the brain retraining and still have an activity that keeps their mind engaged. So you have to judge where that parameter is. And some people opt for a stress-free activity. So they say, okay, right now I can't handle work. So they may leave work temporarily, but then do some volunteering or work in a charity store, so that they are still engaging their mind and still doing day-to-day activities which are paced, but not doing the activities which are high expectation, high stress, which they know their own conscientiousness and high standards means that they stress themselves out.
Very well said, very well explained. And I think just one more important thing to call out in that question, because she's saying, do I need to take the time off and just rest? And I know for me and for many people, like when I finally took a leave of work from my job, it was to rest, and I rested for months and I got worse. So it's not just about, for the vast majority of people, at least that I talk to, it's about what you do with that time when you take time off work, because it's understandable to think, I feel sick, I feel tired, I just need to rest so that my body can fight this off. But when nervous system dysregulation is at the core of what's going on, taking time off to rest, I haven't talked to anyone, I haven't interviewed anyone who rested their way out of this. So it's about using that time to do all of the things that you were just talking about. Rest too, of course, rest is important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is because the amygdala and insular parts of our brain, they, at least when you're in a work situation or you're volunteering, there's a level of engagement that isn't just about threat detection. They're engaging in the outer world. Yeah. But when you're then are resting at home, those alert centers, they don't have anything external to focus on anymore. So what are they going to do? They're going to focus 100% of their attention on the threat detection inside your own body, the symptoms in your own body. And that's why sometimes people find that when they just rest and do nothing and have no engagement, they seem to feel worse because the threat now is there 100%, and that's what the brain is focusing on. So an element of engagement, whether it's audiobooks or whatever engages your mind. We talk about re-engaging with joy as a third R of the program, and that often is about taking up fun, relaxing activities that engage you but don't stress you. And that can train the amygdala and insula that you aren't in danger. And these are day-to-day activities that you're doing that are fun and uplifting, and therefore we're not in danger. We're not under threat.
All right, I'm warning you. I've got a not easy one coming your way. It's one that people ask all the time, and it's such a valid question from Meredith. How can I best calm my nervous system as a mom to 2 young children? Like, I've got these screaming beings throwing food on the wall. I'm responsible for their survival. They demand my attention 24 hours a day. They don't let me sleep. How do I focus on myself and be a parent to myself? And how do I possibly calm my nervous system with all of this in my life?
We get this question a lot. And in fact, on our forum, we have dedicated threads just for parents who are going through exactly what Meredith has described there, and sharing tips and tricks about what they can do, how they can manage these situations, because you're wanting to calm your nervous system, but you've got young kids, you've got to look after them, etc., etc. So I think there are internal changes and external changes. The external change, what I mean by that is a practical change, is first of all, being okay with reaching out for help. So we go back to that personality trait of conscientiousness. Often I notice, and especially in mothers, that they feel guilty or bad if they're not there 100% of the time with their child or their children. They feel that they're a bad mother for whatever reason. And actually, it's okay to reach out for help to friends, to family members, your partner, and allow them to take more of the responsibility of child rearing, to give yourself some time, some rest for yourself to be able to heal, because you're only going to be able to be there more for your children when you're at your best capacity, your best energy levels. So being okay with that and reaching out for help and support and not feeling guilty about that, I think is really, really important. And we often notice in people who are helpers and rescuers in their personality traits, they don't want to reach out for help because they see it as a sign of weakness, or I'm not good enough, or they feel they're being a burden on somebody else. Yeah. But in this state, it's okay to feel vulnerable and say, I need support, I need help, and that's okay. So I think that's the first external shift or practical shift people can make. And then internally, with the tools that we describe in brain retraining, you're doing your best. We always say that phrase, do your best, leave the rest. So you do what you can to calm your nervous system, and then get to a sense of acceptance and surrender that yes, there will be noise. Yes, there will be continual busyness. And you'll just loosen and calm your nervous system and float through whatever challenges come. Float through whatever responsibilities you know are there, and not do it with fists clenched. Go, oh my gosh, how am I going to heal if I've got this going on? Oh, this is terrible. That resistance will just create persistence in terms of the stress in your nervous system. So if at a practical level, there are things we have to do with our families, support our families, feed our families. If we've got no way out, just accepting and surrendering to that and keeping your nervous system loose and calm and being okay with the busyness, the chaos that is there. And that's the idea of being the eye in the storm. So people often report there's a storm going on around them, but right in the center of the storm, there's actually a place of peace and calm, that the winds are swirling around you, but you can still feel centered with practice. Not easy, of course not, but with practice, we can be the eye of the storm.
And just as someone who is a child who grew up with a mother with chronic fatigue syndrome, I know the mom guilt or the dad guilt can be really intense. And my mom told me in later years, like, I wish I could have played with you more. I wish I could have made you muffins from scratch, and all these things that she wished she could have done. And she had this guilt. But as a child, you only know what you know. Your world is your normal. I was happy. She was sometimes, not, she was virtually always on the couch or in bed, but she'd be on the couch and I'd get my blanket and I'd lay on the floor and we'd watch a TV show together. And that was one of our things. And it was like my favorite thing, making this pillow fort on the floor and hanging out with her. And sometimes we'd watch the same one over and over and over again. And I loved it. And we knew the lines. So of course, there's 1,000 things that you probably feel like you should be doing as a parent, but kids are probably going to turn out okay, and they're not going to really know the difference. So I think just let yourself off the hook, as long as they know they're loved. Of course, it's not ideal, but
that's exactly it. You've hit the nail on the head there. We judge our parenting through how many activities we've done with our child, right? Or how much we've done fun things with them, or this or that. And actually, really at the core of it, the child just wants that connection and that love, and you just being there and that quality time together. And if it's sitting on the couch and that's all you can manage, that is good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is a great question from Veronica, because we talk about these two separately and then like they're the same thing. So what is the difference between brain retraining and nervous system regulation?
Yes, there's so many terms being thrown out at the moment and so many different ways of looking at this. So you see, the thing is, we call the whole package brain retraining. Others may say this is nervous system regulation and this is brain retraining over here. Now, the way to think about this is, imagine that you have a field, and in that field, there is a river running through that field. And the more the water flows along that left-hand river, that rivulet, the more symptoms we get, the worse our condition gets. And what we do in brain retraining is we want to create and divert the river to a new pathway, the right-hand path, as we call it. So we've got to dig a new channel. So brain retraining is that ability to dig that new channel and have the water flow through the right-hand path. Now, these two pathways represent, on the left-hand side, that hyperdefensiveness, brain thinking we're under threat and triggering the nervous and immune systems. And the right-hand path represents a sense of safety and coming back to homeostasis and balance in the body. And so we've got to train the brain that we aren't in danger on the left-hand path and shift the water to the right-hand path. But if that ground is frozen, how are you going to do that? The river pathway is going to be fixed because the ground is frozen. So nervous system regulation is a preparation and part of brain retraining, because nervous system regulation enables you to make the brain more neuroplastic, more flexible, calm the brain down. And therefore, it's an integral part of brain retraining. When we calm the brain down, we loosen up the soil, we thaw the ground, it all heats up. And eventually then we can divert the water onto the right-hand path. And so nervous system regulation works with brain retraining. If there isn't nervous system regulation, brain retraining is not going to be effective. So we see it as part of one package. And secondly, we know that when people engage in breath work, in meditation, in relaxation techniques, they actually create new neural pathways. They actually increase and decrease certain structures in the brain. So if we're looking at calling brain retraining actually shifts in the brain, new neural networks, nervous system regulation achieves that. And we know that the science supports that. So it doesn't really matter too much about the nomenclature of how we describe different things. It's just, whatever categories or categorization helps you, but we call nervous system regulation part of our overall brain retraining.
That was well said. I just want to throw up, thank you, Moses. That was very kind and generous of you. We appreciate the support. I'm seeing a lot of questions. I'm going to put one up that I think encompasses a few of that come up, and it's about buying different devices to help with your recovery. So, there's two different ways to go about this. One is getting wearables like Aura or these things that track, your heart rate and your breathing and all of that and your heart rate variability. And then there's also devices that do like vagus nerve stimulation. So I'll put this one up here from Melanie, but know that I've been reading a lot of your questions in the comments here about these different devices. So maybe we'll start with the ones that look at like body tracking, like Aura. How helpful is it to be like looking at your stats every day and seeing what's going on there?
Right. There's so many ways to answer this question. Personally, we are not a fan of wearables in terms of ones that track these stats, apart from we use them in clinical studies, ironically, because that's useful for our data collection, but it's not useful for brain retraining. And let me explain why. With all of that information, initially it's useful, but we know from studies that people who wear wearables for sleep, they are more stressed and have less good sleep than the people who don't wear the wearables. And the reason is that when you are tracking all of this data, you start panicking more. You start getting stressed and anxious about the data that's coming your way as yet another added problem in your life that you've got to solve and fix that you never knew you had a problem with before. And just having the data doesn't necessarily help you have better sleep or better activity or whatever the rings are tracking or levels of stress.
Yeah.
It just makes you more stressed because you're more self-aware of what's going on. And the whole purpose of brain retraining is to train your brain that you are not in danger, you are safe. So why have a gadget informing you of all the problems that you have that you need to fix?
Right.
And then secondly, when it comes to neurostimulation, vagus nerve stimulation, etc. Now, just to be very clear, we aren't dogmatic at the Gupta program. We really are just here to help people heal. So if you find something that's beneficial, that helps you, fantastic, that's great. But what we hear time and time again is that with vagus nerve stimulators, neural stimulators, initially, they seem to have some kind of relaxing effect. Yeah. But over time, the effect seems to wear off and not be so effective. And of course, I say this with a disclaimer that I don't have any scientific evidence for that. That's just what we hear said by many of our patients. And it's not that those neurostimulators fix the problem or heal or cure you from your condition. They just are essentially helping you regulate the nervous system. So in our view, in our humble view, we feel it's better to go to the root and train your brain naturally to be in that calmer state versus relying on an external gadget to do that in the longer term. Maybe in the short term, it's okay. But in the longer term, you want to develop that skill internally for the rest of your life. And we don't know in the longer term, if you keep artificially stimulating your vagus nerve, does your body and your brain counteract that situation? So if your brain is saying panic, 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 and not stimulating your vagus nerve, and then you are artificially stimulating your vagus nerve, there are two contradictory statements that your body is getting. And over time, does your vagus nerve or your ability to stimulate your vagus nerve get compromised? I don't know the answer to that, but all I am saying is I wouldn't rely on it as a long-term solution to these types of conditions.
That's really helpful. And it's a good point that our bodies work to keep homeostasis. So they want everything at a certain level. Like if your body gets too hot, it's going to work to cool you down. You're going to start sweating. So if you're driving up that vagus nerve unnaturally, it likely will be counteracting with something that's pushing in the other direction. So it could be working against you. I tend to think of because I have a vagus nerve stimulator myself, and I think of it like a sleeping pill. Like when I was recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome, I had a really tough time sleeping, and I did all the sleep hygiene, and I still wasn't sleeping. So for a while, I was taking sleeping medication. It was not my long-term plan, and I knew this wasn't going to fix me forever. But in the short term, it helped me out. So I tend to think of things like vagus nerve stimulation. And one of the questions was around different brands that I don't know how they compare. But it could be an aid on your journey, but I don't think it's your final answer because you need to get to the core exactly like you're saying.
Exactly. So in our analogy of the left and right path, a neurostimulator may help loosen up the soil a bit, but ultimately the brain has to be retrained that you're no longer under threat. And that's the longer term solution.
Yeah. All right. So I want to get back to I want to make sure that people fully understand what your program's about, because I'm sure some people will be considering it. So another question that came up, and I hear this just generally about various programs. So they're asking, this was from Unrup again. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. But are the specific meditations that you have mandatory? I do my own meditations. I've been doing so for many years, long before I became seriously ill, and I deeply enjoy them. So, yeah.
As we said, we're not dogmatic. So we ultimately want you to heal. So if you find certain meditations better for you, when people come on our program, we do say, why don't you at least experiment with ours? Because you don't know, maybe ours will be even more relaxing for you or take you into that deeper state. And for some people who are regular meditators, actually our meditations are the ones that really made the difference. And they were quite surprised by that, because not every meditation practice is the same. But if you try our meditations and you find that yours actually still take you into that deeper, more relaxed state, that's totally fine. That does not oppose our program, because ultimately all types of relaxation are doing the same thing, which is to get into the relaxation response, into the parasympathetic response. The vagus nerve becomes naturally stimulated, and therefore we're able to then retrain our brain more effectively. So continue with the practices that work best for you. And just on that point, I always like to comment on, there's a lot of hype right now about vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the problem. That's the problem to all these different conditions. That's the root source of my anxiety or my depression or my chronic fatigue. And I really caution people on this, because it's become quite a fad now. In my view, in my humble view, the vagus nerve is essentially simply a conduit to transfer information from what the brain is saying, and the limbic system and the amygdala, and then essentially transferring that information of what the body should then do next. The vagus nerve itself is not a decision maker, in my view. It simply relays information from the limbic system, from the cortex, in terms of how your brain is feeling. So to say that the problem is with the vagus nerve, no, the vagus nerve is just a messenger. You don't shoot the messenger, right? You go to the root cause and the root source of it in the brain.
There are a few questions coming in about your program. I'm just going to try and, I think actually we could capture most of them. If you could just walk us through what it looks like to be in your program, because people are asking about like live group calls. When do they happen? Are they in different time zones? Like, just what does it actually look like on a day-to-day basis or week by week to go through your program?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And people ask us this, like, what is it? What is the program? So the first port of call is, the first R of the program is relaxing the nervous system, regulating the nervous system. So we give people lots of choice. There's different breathwork exercises, there's different meditation techniques, there's different somatic retraining techniques. We call it somatic retraining. And so the first port of call is regularly engaging with those practices. And we know that sometimes it can be very hard when you're at home by yourself trying to heal. And so we have what we call daily Gupta size, which are daily Zoom calls. They're different every day. They're with our trained Gupta program coaches who take you through that nervous system regulation every day, Monday to Friday. And it's a game changer, because now you feel like you're part of a community. You can see everybody else on Zoom. We have a couple of hundred people joining every day, and they're optional. You can do those live events. You can do the streaming audios that we have. So that's the first port of call is learning some general day-to-day techniques to calm and regulate your nervous system. Then once you've learned that, the second phase is then the brain retraining. And there we go deeper into somatic retraining, which is using specialized somatic techniques that we've developed to help train the brain that we aren't in danger. And then connected to that is our 7-step process, which is we help a patient help you recognize when your brain is about to react to a threat or potential threat, and then reorientate it, bring it back to safety, and doing that repeatedly. So we give you these short exercises to do throughout the day with that retraining. And there's so much more, but the most important thing is that we want people to pace themselves through our tools and techniques and choose the right ones for them rather than do everything. So it's a very comprehensive program, but those are the two core components, the regulation of the nervous system and then the retraining of the brain. Each time we recognize when our brain is going into that threat mode. And so as part of that, people can access our app. So on our app, they will then get access to all the videos and audios. They'll then get access to our daily Gupta size, our daily events for nervous system regulation and brain retraining. And then they have our weekly webinar. So I present a weekly webinar going through the content and material that people can go through each week. And another game changer, we've just developed and launched, you may know of this, our 90-day program. And what this is that many people find that with brain retraining, they've got to try and figure out what they've got to do. What am I supposed to do today? Yeah. But imagine if you had every day, like day one, this is all you need to do. Here are the videos to watch. Here's the audios to listen to. Right. Day two, do this. Day three, do this. Then you're not trying to get do everything. You're not overwhelmed by the program. It's a bite-sized chunk each day. Been an absolute game changer. 83% of our patients said they now found that more effective than the standard program, and they found it 72% more effective than the standard program. We wish we'd launched it years ago. And so the 90-day program is included in the standard price of the program, and it's an option. So you can either do the self-directed one, or you can do the 90-day program. And it's been wonderful for people. They're just loving it, because every day I know exactly what I need to do. And you can tick it off. So here's my practices for today, ticked. Right, tomorrow, here are my practices for tomorrow. I go through them, ticked off. And if you miss a day, it doesn't matter. You can go back to whatever it's day 14 or day 15 that you're at. So you're not even expected that I have to do it religiously every day, otherwise it's not going to work. You pick up where you left off. So that's another way that people navigate through the program, is through the 90-day version.
And just a couple of other ones that came up are, do all of these live things that people can take part in, do they happen at different time zones, different times of the day, so that people in different parts in the world can access them?
So we have our patients all over the world, America, Europe. And so we try to make it at a time that's flexible for everybody. So they're at 10 a.m. Eastern is the timing for the nervous system regulation piece. And then at 10:45 Eastern is the brain retraining piece. And if people miss the live event, they're recorded. So for 5 days, you can just catch up on the recordings if you missed the live version. And the live webinars with me are on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
All right. Well, this is incredible. We'll make sure, of course, to have everything about your program linked in this video's description. So there's still a few more questions that we didn't get to about details, but everything is on the website and you can reach out to learn more. This has been absolutely amazing, Ashok. Every time you're here, I learn so much, and I know people appreciate you so much. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the invite. I've loved it.
And Ashok has been on the channel a few times before and covered a lot of things that we didn't cover today. So I'll make sure to have one of those incredible interviews linked up as well for people who would like to learn more. And thank you to everyone who joined live. Thank you for all your questions. Did our best to get to as many as we could. You can keep them going in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them there. And so, yeah, thank you for watching, and hope to see you in this next interview up here with Ashok.
And Raelan, if I could just grab like 10 seconds just to let everyone know, we're very excited. We've just published an independent clinical randomized controlled trial on fibromyalgia, which obviously has a lot of crossovers with long COVID and ME/CFS. And that study has just been published. It was on 100 patients, and quite incredible results. We saw a 54% reduction in fibromyalgia after 3 months, 50% reduction in depression, and a 63% reduction in sleep disturbances and 50% reduction in pain. So some amazing results. So that study has just come out, and we're doing more studies, as you know.
That is absolutely incredible, because I have people asking me all the time, like, where are the studies if this stuff works? And you have such incredible, scientifically backed evidence showing that this approach is working for people. So wonderful. So great to hear. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing, not just helping people and putting the information out there, but getting that validity behind it. And hopefully so we can get more and more of the conventional medical system on board, as well as they're slowly getting there. So it's happening. All right.
And the great work you do, Raelan, in supporting these communities. Thank you for all the good work you do.
Absolutely my pleasure. All right. Thanks again, Ashok. Thanks to all of you watching. And see you in the next video.